The sunrise hits my face like pouring whiskey on a fire. Woke up with a t-shirt on, I'm pretty sure belongs to a stranger. Last night I know we laughed too hard, I think we spilled some drinks and tattooed some ink. Wild hearts don't waste no time, when we live the nights no one remember. I sing the blackout blues, but there's a smile behind these cloudy eyes, and I don't
Oh, testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3. But I can hear myself.
Sound check. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Is that an echo?
When I speak, I can hear back myself. Yeah.
Oh, all right. All right, thank you very much. I think we are starting the next session on IP address abuse policy BoF. Oh, thank you. All right, my name is Alvin Kwan. So I'll start. I'll be the moderator for this session. Actually, I may need to have the clicker. Oh. Thank you. All right, so let me start with why we are creating this particular BoF. So the APNIC community is typically consists of what we call internet intermediaries, the ISPs, hosting providers, etc. So in the a scheme of internet governance, we are typically considered as a me conduit. So we are not responsible for the content of the internet. We want to remain as a neutral party as much as possible. However, if you are following some of the internet governance development, we're seeing a lot of government who are quite interested in regulating the online space, the internet itself. So we are seeing, typically when we act as a me conduit, we would have some sort of liability exemption. But are we having all these different liability exemption which enable us to be able to grow our business and remain legal free? So that's one of the questions that we have to look into. We are seeing some government regulation that may or may not have direct impact into how we operate as a me conduit. We're seeing some potential regulation maybe in Indonesia, Asian countries as well. So the question would be then, how should we as a community react to this global changes in internet policy development? So this BoF is aimed to really look into some of the regulatory trends, potential threats to the community, and how do we actually use the multi-stakeholder driven policy to minimize this kind of risk, and how do we actually do a policy development that is actually in the best interest of the community as well. So now this BoF I would say is relevant to a couple of people. First of all, the ISP and hosting provider community, because we are directly impacted by this, by any government regulation, if there's any. Certainly, I would hope that this would be of interest to government body as well, because there are abuse, IP address abuse that is existing on the society, and how do we actually cooperate together to deal with this kind of issues. I would hope that the search community would be of interest as well, because they are responsible for responding to a lot of cybersecurity incidents, and also the cybersecurity community. All right, so to start, let me just quickly introduce myself and the panelists as well. My name is Alvin Kwan. I'm the head of corporate development and strategic partnership of CSC, which is a US company. I'm experienced in the kind of the internet industry, 16 years. So as a company, we are helping a lot of large corporations to deal with domain names, and also monitor the internet for brand protection, anti-fraud issue, and stuff like that. So we deal with abuse, different types of abuse on a daily basis. But we are also a domain name registrar ourselves. So we also see the problem from the other side. If we receive a lot of complaints and abuse report, it is going to be a cost for us as well. So we understand both sides. I'm certainly a strong supporter of the bottom-up multi-stakeholder model, and hopefully we can actually talk about all the IP address abuse and how do we actually utilize the multi-stakeholder approach. So my next panelist would be Ian Sheldon. His profile will be too long for me to read out, but I am hoping to have Ian here today because he, certainly involved in the ICANN world, in the Government Advisory Committee, or GAC in the ICANN world. Hopefully, he will be able to provide some kind of ICANN and internet governance perspective. I wouldn't hope he provide a lot of government perspective, because the whole point about this BoF is not to have government getting too involved, isn't it? So, I think Ian will be able to do that. So my next panelist would be Charles Noor. He's the Vice VP of Community Investment and Policy and Advocacy in CIRA. He's responsible for NetGood, very experienced in the field and involved in government community in the past as well. The reason why I hope to have Charles here is because this is not an APAC only problem. It is a global trend, and hopefully Charles would be able to provide some insight into how the different regions are experiencing these particular issues, and give us a broader perspective as well. My last panelist would be KT, partner of PwC Dark Lab, co-founding a number of different cybersecurity initiatives. So you can read his profile on the screen. But the reason why I hope KT would be here today is to provide a cyber security perspective on this particular problem. Now, and KT has kindly prepared some analysis on IP address abuse that he based upon the research on PwC Dark Lab as well. So, when I read through the deck, I think it is quite interesting, and the finding are, pretty insightful. So hopefully it would be a good setup for us for the discussion. So how do we go about it? So I've done the first part already, introducing the panelists and why we're having this particular BoF. I will pass on to Katie to kind of help us to set the scene with some example of IP address abuse. And then I'll have Charles to help us to frame the question a little bit more, and then we can start the panel discussion. So I am hoping that we can have a more interactive discussion today. So I would love to invite all of you to listen in, but also come out and provide your feedback and question as well. All right, thank you very much. I'll pass on the time to Katie. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. I hope you all can hear me and see the screen as well. So, yeah, sorry I cannot be there on site. And thank you, Alban and Apinic for the invitation. I'm very, very happy, very honored to join these panel discussions. And for this next coming 10 to 15 minutes, I will quickly brush through some of the research that we have been doing on some of the IP address abuse matter. Okay. Just a quick intro. I will not go through this in very detail, just to let you know. So Dalet is a full suite of cybersecurity professional firm. We are based in Hong Kong. So we do lots of research. We collect like DNS records. Of course, we collect lots of IP information as well. So we perform a lot of analysis. The aim of the analysis is to help our clients to identify threat at the earlier stage so that they can eradicate the threat before the threat actors actually attack them. Yeah, so I think I'm going to set the scene here a little bit. So I'm going to go through this very quickly because I think everyone on site or online, you guys are the experts. So again, the way how internet is function, I'm sure you understand, is governed by a lot of underlying internet infrastructure like the ISP, the DNS, the cloud services, and it's all powered by different technology component like the switches, the router, the firewall, etc. That's the internet that we know today, how it connects us together, that we enjoy all the convenience, the content, and that's how the underlying infrastructure is connecting us today. Okay. So obviously the internet is not so simple now. So I think the greatest things that mankind is focusing, I think if you look at the Fortune 10 or the Magnificent Seven that we all mention, they are all internet companies or they are technology related. So the internet, like when it first started versus what we have today, and you look at all the innovation that we are working on today, whether it's blockchain, whether it's cloud, whether it's AI, they are all built riding on the internet that we know. So a lot more applications, a lot more content, have been built on the internet that we know today. And again, the definition from ICANN is obviously, the way how you look at it is the numbers and the name, right? So the IP address and the DNS record, basically, okay, that we know. Okay. So the research that we did, we collate like IP information. Obviously, from an intelligence perspective, for those that in the security committee, you know that we have a crowdsourcing protocol that we share intelligence with. Some of the shared intelligence is commercialized through various products. And Dark Lab is absolutely part of that community. So we collate like intelligence about this IP, who is using it, what's the background, and we use this information to run our threat operations. We run the cyber threat operation. Again, the aim is to detect cyber threat at the earlier stage, help our client to eradicate. Okay, let's dive into our research. Okay, so some numbers here. Yeah, so if you look at the IP abuse that we discover, obviously the IP abuse that we saw that the hosting or the server actually used for most in terms of the highest, if you look at the chart, is actually running for the C2. Some is running for the botnet. Some is running from the remote access Trojan. Some is for the phishing, etc. And we just categorize, apologize if there's anyone on the screen, but we're just being direct. These are all the reported IP abuse, and we resolved to the ASN, and this is the classifications that we found. Okay. Let me go in. If we break down by the registry, this tree, I'm sorry again to call this out directly. This is again based on our research. This top three internet registry contributes 98% of all the IP abuses in our scope of our research. Okay, this top three internet registry contribute 98%. Again, it's very focused on this tree, right? So we'll be wondering why is this happening? Okay, yeah. So not sure if anyone here has heard of bulletproof hosting. That's the term that we use in our community. Basically, what it means is that it's a hosting that is used by the attacker to do their job by the threat actors. And if you look at the way how the bulletproof hosting is done, obviously the threat actor can compromise any server, um, run by anyone and use that as a platform to hack. They can also lease, and if you look, they can also create on their own to run that. In our practice, we observe is that these two are the preferred model. Basically, the cost is low. They can lease, they can hide their through the KYC, they can provide certain falsified information and can hide themselves. And they can always delist it, making cost efficient. And the way they have done it, if you look at the bulletproof hosting, the way they've done it is that it's very sophisticated. They can spin up the environment or the cloud environment, and they have the packages that they can unpack and it loaded with all the tools that they have allowed them to do their activities. Okay, so that's the that's the bulletproof hosting. Okay, let's go into our case study one. This is the IP abuse. If you look at this screen here, it was first reported on the 28th of January, and this IP range belongs to this company. Belongs to this company, and because it was reported, okay, and this company was dissolved, and subsequently a company again was created to host a similar IP, and of course it was again dissolved, and subsequently it was using a Hong Kong company to continuously hosting this IP range, and again this IP range repeatedly has been reported abuse. They've been used to hack certain companies or even citizens. And what we found is that all these companies that were used to host this that they own this IP range, they use similar email address, although the company is different, and they use same physical address and similar email, even though the email that they use in this Hong Kong is the same. It's the same. They're using similar personal information, individual information as part of their registration to own this IP range. And again, this IP range is continuous to be flagged as abusing the other victims. Okay? So if you look at all this that we mentioned, these two companies that we mentioned, same email, including the one in Hong Kong, same email, and it's an absolutely identical UK address. And moreover, obviously, we are from Hong Kong. We are a Hong Kong-based company. The address they provided in Hong Kong does not exist at all. It does not exist. We check it to the government. And again, this company is obviously very fishy. Okay. And but of course, it was dissolved in June. But if you look at the timeline that we've been doing the research, this continued to evolve for about January to June. And they were migrating from one registry to another registry and using similar registration information. Okay, and yeah, again, you look at this. Again, this address does not exist in Hong Kong. This is some of our checking. Okay, so again, we believe that this company is doing a bulletproof hosting. Their job is to host their platform for the attacker hooked up to the internet, and they can perform their threat activities. This is one example. Okay, and again, they've been remaining active as of the time that we have here is April. I think now it's no longer valid. But again, this when we check. They've been changing the company information, but again, the IP range remains as abused and remains as suspicious. Okay. Okay, this is another case study that we found. Okay, again, this is under the ethnic. Again, the IP range that we found is being abused, and again, we checked to the company that owns it. Again, it's a fake address. It does not exist, and the company that we checked to the company registry, actually the company is still owning the IP address is still active as of July this year, but the company has been dissolved. And again, the IP has been used to hack other companies or citizens. Okay, and we check against this company that has been dissolved. Okay, using fake address. The way how they advertise is they are doing a cloud services, and these are some of the fake advertisement that they are doing. Okay. Yeah, so again, if you look at this, all these are all the proof. For those people you understand in the security committee, these are all the abused IP addresses that's been used to run as a Cobalt Strike. Cobalt Strike is a hacking tool. They run as a C2 server. They connect back to the victim and continue to have a backdoor connectivity to the victim. Which ransomware they do that, APT, nation state attacker, they do that as well. Okay. And the APT, the C2 activity, the connectivity persists for 7 months. Okay. Yeah, so why this is not taken down, despite the report email isn't even active. When we send to it, the email does bounce back, and there's no way that we can record to this. And we want to take this down, is very difficult. Again, all this information is false. It does not work. Yeah, again, if Dark Lab able to detect this, I'm sure Internet Registry or anyone on the street with the crowdsourcing intelligence, you can start detecting this. Okay, this is again our research. And the other message that I would like to pass is that we also start to observe beside the company IP range that's been used to abuse, we just start to see that the consumer side of the IP again. I always use this analogy, in the past or in the physical world today, if you go around and use a knife and you commit a crime, there's consequence. But in the internet world, you abuse certain IP and there's no consequence after that. Again, this is something that we picked up. We're seeing this again on the consumer level IP, just like our house. We do not know the information behind. It can be the IP has been hacked by the attacker using as a platform, or again running a bulletproof hosting. We see two potential scenarios. Okay, this is something that picked up in Singapore. Yeah. So these are research on the numbers. Again, this is APNIC. Actually, this year, at the earlier of this year, I also did I was in Hanoi, again with Alban, and I did similar presentation on the name, on the DNS information. I will not go through in this detail today, but I just want to mention that if you look at the research that we look into certain registry, the highest that we picked up on certain registry, over 1 day of new domain, 36% of 1 day newly registered domain is used for phishing purpose. Again, it's DNS abuse. Again, I will not go through this in detail. It's different forum, but I just want to make a point here that the both abuse apply on numbers and they apply on names as well. Okay, so again, we consider this as an internet infrastructure. This form and the basis of how internet functions, and they're being abused and commit crime. That's why we see the cybercrime has been going on the rise. And again, this is just some of the example that some of the phishing site that has been used for phishing. Okay. Okay, so I think that's about it, what I wanted to mention. Again, I think as a way forward, I'll probably leave it as the discussion. But again, I understand there are different stakeholders in the internet community. I just want to make a point here because we do lots of response work after the organization been hacked, and we go in and we discover the hosting. Sometimes we work with enforcement party. It's just very difficult for us to eradicate. It's just very difficult for us to eradicate the threat. Okay, that's about it. My presentation, and happy to go into the panel discussion. Back to you, Alban. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And I
KT.
apologize if I offended anyone on stage. Again, these are facts that we picked up and happy to discuss and share different point of view. Thank you.
No worries. I don't think you will be, because this is what actually happened. So hopefully we are able to work together to address some of this issue as well. So I would like to move on to our panel discussion. But before I do that, I would actually want to start with Charles to kind of help us to frame the conversation a bit more as well. If you don't mind, please have Charles' presentation up.
Hey, everybody. Everyone can hear me? Great. So these are just 3 slides to set the context for what we do at CIRA. Sorry. All good? This one's forward yet?
No, the big one.
Sorry. Great. Getting my buttons worked out. So this is just a quick framing of what we're doing in the Canadian Internet Registration Authority. We're a registry. We're a CCTLD operator.ca. We have 3.5 million domains under management. Obviously a different space than in the numbering community. But just to kind of let you know what we're doing in particular, and remember, we're a CC, so we don't have the obligation, same obligations that a G does, GTLDs, for example, in their contracts with ICANN. So we're also a bit different there. Obviously DNS abuse is a big deal. We just heard that in the previous presentation, and it's become a huge issue over a period of time, particularly within the ICANN space, for those of you that are following it. And there had been a tremendous amount of pressure there, which we can maybe get into a bit later. So just really quickly, what we do is a fair bit of proactive monitoring. And as you just heard, we use the threat intelligence feeds, automated tools, and different technologies to identify malicious .ca. We're going to stick with the idea that the ICANN DNS abuse definitions fit with us as well: phishing, malware, botnets, spam. Because again, we're a CC, we have a whole other bucket that we would consider DNS abuse as well, and that is something we can set as a CC that we can address if a DNS is not pure technical, but for example, if there's abuse related to child abuse or whatnot, we can move pretty quickly. We have takedown processes. I'll get into that in a little bit. We work across the supply chain in order to make those happen. And we're quite lucky, and hard work, but also the conditions of who we are means that CIRA has a fairly clean namespace, and we consistently rank in the top 5 CCTLDs in the world. And if you want to look at it to a .com, and of course you can't, it's not apples to apples here, but there's about 10 times more abuse on the .com than there is on .ca. And again, you're talking 3.5 million versus zillions and in the .com. So we're not pointing fingers, but we just want to give you a sense of where we sit. So here we go. This is a NetBeacon. You'll probably be familiar with the NetBeacon, formerly the DNS Abuse Institute. This is where we fall over the past few months, just to give you a sense of our ranking and what that means. And we're looking at observed maliciously registered domains, right? We're not looking at other vectors or these are domains that are registered specifically for nefarious purposes. And just to give you a sense of how we look at this, something important to remember for us as a CCTLD is we have what's called a CPR, which is a Canadian presence requirement. So if you do not have a nexus to Canada, you're not allowed to register a .ca. There are 5 categories or 4 categories that you see on the screen, but we actually have 18 different categories in terms of what that means to have a nexus to Canada. So right away, the space becomes a lot smaller and more easy to deal with. We have what's called a RIV process, which is a registrant information validation process. So every month we're doing that, we're doing our proactive scanning, we're doing sampling, and there are indicators that there might be a malicious registration. We have a normal process, which you can see on top there. We lock the domain right away, so it can't be transferred. We give ample time for the registrant to get back to prove their identity, essentially, and that their connection to Canada is valid. And you can see that there are a couple of opportunities to do that before we will actually cancel. Now, DNS abuse, you'll see at the bottom, is a bit quicker. It's in fact a lot quicker. We can do it in about a day. And a lot of, I'll be quite frank that, this was a result of our government coming and talking to us, certainly about some of what they were seeing and some of the concerns that they had. The RIV process at the top is obviously a bit longer. There's a reason for that. Whereas if we know something is happening and we have really concrete DNS abuse technical indicators, we can move quite quickly, and within a day we can resolve that. Obviously, going after DNS abuse, we can get at it through the RIV process because we're looking at registrants and asking them to verify who they are, what their connection is. Most of the bad guys, if they are really into malicious use, will not respond. Simply just do not respond. So we have a really quick way to address that, and we're quite lucky. So I just want to stop there. That's the CIRA experience, which is not obviously directly transferable, but it gives you a sense of how we're addressing some of this. And we have a lot of flexibility given that we're a CC.
Thank you, Charles. So let's have a chat together about this particular issue. And I'll be quite frank. By the end of this BoF, I would like to see, whether the community have any interest to really look into IP address abuse as a policy development process. And if there are, and there's not a lot of concern, I would, that's probably would be the next step. So, right. So I would like to ask Ian and Charles, maybe Ian first, and then Charles can follow. Now, when I read through Katie's presentation, I was actually caught by a little bit of a surprise. I wasn't expecting linkages like this to happen and stuff like that. So in general, when do you think IP address abuse is a thing that we need to address?
I mean, looking at the presentation, the evidence is reasonably clear that there's a problem that needs remediation. And from my perspective in the GAC, I think that solution needs a multi-stakeholder, community-driven approach. And the first question that comes to mind is, I think those examples talk through specific, concrete examples, but what's the breadth of abuse that we're talking about here, and how do we start framing this up in a way that the community can understand with a well-understood definition? And I think that was one of the pieces that really worked in the ICANN space. The community knew there was a problem, but kept flipping between, is it a technical problem? Is it a content issue? Who should be responsible? And the community went round and round in circles on this until they landed on that definition that Charles talked about, where the community could understand, they all agreed there's a problem. This is what the problem looks like, and here's what's within our remit to tackle this. So certainly from a government perspective, that community-driven approach was very, very welcome.
Thank you, Charles. And by the way, I wonder is Katie still online as well? If you can help check that.
Yeah, of course. I'm still here.
Great, thank you. Yep, Charles.
Great. Yeah. So, I mean, answering the question directly, I would think we're talking about it here on stage. Governments are talking about it. Various fora are talking about it. So certainly IP abuse is an issue. There's no question. And it was great to have the illustration. I think the question becomes, to what extent, as Ian was talking about, does this start stacking up to become a government issue or an industry issue, an operator issue? And I think my sense is that in the domain space, particularly through ICANN and through what Ian was talking about, there was enough of pressure exerted at, this is my personal experience of previously working within the GAC at ICANN as well, This is just my view of it, but government essentially came to a point where they said either you folks are going to deal with it because you say you can deal with it, or we're going to deal with it jurisdictionally. Obviously, the industry itself came together. We decided that there are a certain definition space of the 4 or 5 categories of DNS abuse that we're willing to look at. And it's a step forward, and it was a measure, and it is an effort which shows that multi-stakeholder governance does work. But there was, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, there was a lot of pressure coming, is the way that I look at it.
Well, I think the point Ian raised about the definition of IP address abuse would be quite interesting. So when I look into the APNIC policy, we see that there's a mandatory field for abuse mailbox. So everyone have to provide an abuse mailbox, but there's no definition of what abuse actually mean. I would like to see, if the panel can actually define what you think IP address abuse is. I understand that it's like in ICANN world, it takes us like 10 years to come up with the definition. So we're probably not going to have the resolution today, but might be a good start to actually think about in practice what you are seeing as an abuse. Maybe I can start with KT, since you've done the research. If I ask you in general, what do you think from a cybersecurity perspective is IP address abuse? What would you say?
Yeah, so I think I talked about that in the the APAC DNS forum, also regarding the DNS abuse. So in the security community, we have our own definition, and the reason why we have a definition because actually my job is to protect our client organization. That's our job. So when we see enough indicator, we'll block the domain. From a proxy perspective, from a firewall perspective, from an inbound, outbound perspective, and we'll block the IP. And often, we just pass the IP or the domain to the enforcement party. Say, for example, if you work in Hong Kong, we just pass to the Hong Kong Police Force, the Cybercrime Bureau. And we hardly follow up because that's really outside our enforcement jurisdictions. So actually, I'm new in this community to try to learn about how things are done in the in internet community. So we for sure we have a again, when we look into you look at the presentation that I've done, we see Strike, we see C2. Is running, and we know the IP has been used for phishing. We know the domain has been used for phishing. I think we debated about this. I think in the APAC DNS when for example, I think Alban, I remember you talking. If let's say someone imitating, say a bank, say use HSBC as an example, and as the structure of website is the same. Is a typo squatting. That means it's mimicking the domain. The IP that is resolved to do the hosting has been reportedly hosting other website as well. So clearly that is, again, I don't know the background because when the hosting it comes to 2 scenario, right? Whether the server has been compromised, used as a platform, or that that company intentionally running a bulletproof hosting, right? So we don't know enough. So that has to goes to the registry on how they do the KYC. I mean, I particularly enjoy what Charles mentioned, pivot a little bit of the discussion. So some of the KYC that you're using the dossier, I think that's pretty thorough. So clearly, but clearly, I think the enforcement is easier to be done on .cc. Not so much on a GTLD. But anyway, so I want to come back to the definition is that, clearly we do have our own definition because that, and to be honest, I always tell the people in the internet community, maybe from your policy perspective, it's not enough. But from a security perspective, I straight away will block the domain already. From protecting the client perspective, it's enough for me to block the IP. It's enough for me to block the domain already. So as a security professional, we make judgment and we do that immediately. And I'm happy to give that definition on what stage we think that is fishy enough.
All right, thank you. Ian or Charles, any comment from you on the definition?
I saw Aftab's hand at the back, so perhaps he has the answer for us after the panel has a discussion. but I think my only thought is really how do you and thinking back through the way the naming community has thought about this and coming and defining DNS abuse, it was about narrowing in on behaviors or actions that undermined the security and stability of the internet. And I think that's where that important distinction needs to be made clear, because it skirts around the edge of content management. And I think that's a space that this community and many other technical communities don't want to get into. And it's certainly a space that is supercharged in government discussions. So whatever the definition should look like, I think starting with a technical instability perspective, learning from the naming community is probably a good starting point.
Can I challenge you on this a little bit? Because when it is DNS abuse within the 5 defined scope of DNS abuse, we go through the registrar and registry. But if outside that, we typically have to contact the host or the ISP, which is exactly what this community is. So I think the definition is even harder because we are already dealing with the content-based abuse. And by regulation like the DMCA in the US, the hosts are responsible for the content. And that's really the only way to deal with content abuse, actually, unless you want to block it on a government DNS level, which is possible. But in terms of taking down content, it's the host. So I don't want Charles, if you have any experience that you want to share about this.
Oh, so what I would say, I mean, I would align more with where Ian's coming from, right? You opened the conversation talking about mere conduits. And that's been a powerful argument for a long time. And in this room, it's probably going to resonate fairly strongly. And a lot of us would probably come down on that traditional view of, hey, we're providing the plumbing. What's in the plumbing? That's a different ball game. Unfortunately, governments and as the technology develops and as vectors of threat and abuse shift, governments are becoming increasingly impatient, I would say, and unwilling to just simply go with the mere conduit argument. Now, whether that's right or wrong is something we can probably agree on, but the fact is that they're losing patience. So who is better placed to define and to get moving on this stuff? I would argue, again, that starting with the technical definitions is a good place to start. Content's going to be tricky. Content's a really tricky game. We all know why. But if we can start with a technical layer kind of definition, stability writ large, you're going to be in a better space.
All right. I would like to have the conversation a bit more interactive. I believe there's a gentleman in the audience that want to contribute to that discussion. I don't know whether we have another mic that we can pass to that gentleman there. Yeah.
Thank you. Aftab Siddiqui speaking in personal capacity. Just want to clarify a couple of things to the presenter, Katie, if I'm not pronouncing right. The reason you are getting the non-responsive email address because you're looking at the role object, which is non-mandatory optional object. You should be looking at the IRT object. The reason I'm suggesting that because I'm the one who proposed it to be mandatory and validated. The IP address, if you look up the IRT object for that IP address, you have looked up in your CS2 case study 2. then you will find out the email address has been validated. So APNIC, and so as, if I'm not mistaken, RIPE and CC and Aaron as well, they do validate IRT objects, and also copied it in APNIC, the abuse C object, and they are all validated twice in a year. So their email address is actually validated. So if you look at, if you send an email to that one and they don't respond, then probably, that's another discussion. But from the data point of view, that is a validated email address. Whether they do something about it or not, well, that's not our problem. From this community, I mean, we need to, and now coming back to the discussion, this topic is quite close to me. I ran a network abuse BoF since 2011 to 2014. It's not a new discussion, it's been there forever. And we had to close this BoF after 6 sessions. We couldn't convert it into SIG or anything meaningful. The reason for that was because while it is a very interesting topic, the community here can't help, unfortunately. You cannot convert any of this discussion, while they are very valid, into anything meaningful. So the things came out of that was actually the IRT object formation. In other RIRs, it was abuse C, which then later on become mandated. And all these things, we did what we could, but we didn't see any way forward from there, from this community. I mean, they are all their things the governments can do. They have a bigger stick than anybody else. Or you can come up with some carrots. I don't have any. But if you come up with those solutions, yes, they are available. They can be more solution, but unfortunately not available from this platform. So while you can see, well, why the number is not responding, while the address is not valid, I would like to understand how you're going to implement it on a scale, how to verify the addresses. I mean, I saw the example of Sierra, which is pretty good in terms of validating the domain ownership. We have the same in Australia and ORDA. You can't register unless you are unless there are certain categories you fall into. It's easy, but how do you do it in 56 economies in this region? Do it on a scale. Whatever you want to do it on a scale. Then it becomes problematic. 56 economies, 56 laws, 56 jurisdiction, and you come down to the multiple states within those 56 economies, which have literally their own laws and regulations. How are you going to implement that? So while I sympathize with this whole idea, and I love this, that it's been discussed after literally 15 years again, but I don't think so that this community can find a way forward. That is my point of view. Thank you so much.
Thank you for the comment.
Yeah, can I just quickly respond to that, KT? Thanks for the feedback. So again, I'm new in this community. It's my first time attending this. I don't have a solution to this. I just want to caveat that, but I think obviously I don't understand why the problem cannot be solved. Again, I'm not involved at all, so I should not go into detail. But my view is that I think I mentioned that in the APAC DNS forum as well. I think the banking industry has been spending a lot of time in looking into KYC, and this is consumer based. Again, I'm not saying that banking versus internet infrastructure, which registration has more people in the community, but I think 80% of the developed economy, most of us would have a bank or a few banks, right? And we have a lot of eKYC solutions out there. Again, I think bank was used to do a lot of money laundering and siphoning money, fund a lot of crime, traditional crime, and AML law has been put in. But again, I'm not saying that bank is 100% clean. I still get like phishing email that transfer the money to a falsified bank account, even though in Hong Kong, and I report that to the Hong Kong Monetary Authority also. Although I think in Hong Kong and Singapore, I think these two cities we have pretty thorough KYC process. So again, I'm not too sure this is relevant or not, but I do believe that certain other industries, they do have a much stronger regulations in place in order to do that. This is just one of my quick thoughts. But thanks for the feedback. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. I think that's a really good questions to actually have Ian and Charles to chime in as well, because I think the question that you pose is pretty similar to the domain name industry. We have multi-jurisdiction as well, especially the GTLD community. How do we actually handle this? And certainly from the registrar community, there has been a lot of pushback based upon similar concern as well. Ian, Charles, any comments from you? How do we actually resolve this, or what would be, any comments from you?
I might kick off, and I'm sure Charles has got some thoughts on this. But I guess what I'm most curious in the naming space, we saw a handful of large operators who could agree on a definition and had a vested interest in pursuing this, and community momentum built. And it wasn't trying to bring the entire community along on every single issue and every single one, but there was enough momentum whereby you were able to push the issue to the edges and start to work through bringing more and more on board. And in the ICANN space, there was a process maybe last year or the year before whereby the community voted on changing the contractual obligations to pursue DNS abuse. And that was a very clear signal that the community recognized this was a problem and there was sufficient momentum to tackle it. And if the community wasn't interested, and if there wasn't resourcing or appetite, that vote would not have passed. And I guess I'm quite curious what that result would look like with this community. Is there sufficient interest from operators here to acknowledge this is a problem, and maybe we don't need to drag IPNIC through this as a first port of call, but is there something that the community can do together to agree on a definition and start tackling these problems without needing to change the governance arrangements in the first instance? So I don't know the history of where the BoF went to and where the challenges were, but yeah.
Right. Sorry, Aftab, I have a lot of opinions. So there are, so it's not like that we don't want to.
So can I ask you to speak up a little bit, because it's a bit hard to hear?
Oh, closer.
Speak.
It's much better. All right. Okay. So it's not that we don't want to. I mean, I'm not a network operator now anymore, right? So, but I have lived that life for most of my career. So it's not that network operators don't want to resolve that issue, but we say, tell us how to do it, right? So if you're going to complain that this IP is doing something wrong, right? And normally I'm an APNIC member. I have my own resources. I run my network from my home. I receive abuse complaints of my home network, which I am 100% sure nothing happened. So how do you differentiate between fraudulent complaints versus actual complaints? That is one. Because my email address, my IRT object is actually published globally. How many times it has been abused, how many times my email address has been abused is also a question mark, which John Brewer is not here, is going to discuss in the policy SIG mailing list. Well, he's here. So he's going to discuss, because it's not that operators don't want to solve this problem. They do want to, but then the question is how. Number one is there are a few mechanisms which in the previous life I have used. For example, you must have heard about a company called Team Cymru. So they actually give you a list of networks which are abusive, right? And in my previous lives, we used to block those addresses. And those were, it's a very well-regarded organization in this community, in the network community, who has another foot in the security industry, very well recognized. And if they give you that IP is not doing well, we normally block it, right? There is another list called DNSBL. So those IPs which have been found abusing the DNS for any other services, they are listed there. Every service provider or system administrator use that DNSBL list as well. to make sure that it's not being, their services are not abused by those. So there are some mechanisms which everybody use. But since I'm saying, since we are in the registry discussion, so we want to come up with a solution which we can solve here on the registry. So what can we do on the registry services? If you see an IP or a network doing an abuse, you can report, right? The moment you report, you can report to APNIC, then it becomes a legal discussion. Community has nothing to do with it, right? I can't come in, well, take this network down or not down. I would like to take like 20 networks down from the APNIC registry, I would love to, but legally I can't. The only thing I can do, I can just block it on my network. But then from this community point of view, we will be getting into a legal jurisdiction, which we cannot. And that is my only objection, saying, well, we do not have a solution. I mean, there is a problem. There is absolutely no, there is no, I'm not contesting that point. There is a problem. How can we solve it from this platform is my only question.
Well, maybe I can chime in first, and if anyone want to respond to this as well. So I believe in the ICANN policy. ICANN is also not responsible for taking down the abusive domain name. Same apply to APNIC, I would suppose. APNIC is not responsible for it. All I can do in the ICANN DNS abuse policy is to say that you should be responsive to abusive report. At the moment, in the APNIC policy, we track the validity of the email address twice a year, but we failed to say that you should be responsive to this. So what if in the example that Katie provided, they actually checked the APNIC abuse reporting email address, and they only respond to that email, and not any other abusive complaint. So if they do that, I suppose there won't be any problem with it. They have, no one is able to touch it. So I think this is one of the point about bulletproof hosts as well. They only respond to certain abuse report or compliance that enable them to survive, but they basically ignore anything else. So this basically create a situation where eventually, Ian, maybe you should not listen to this, but the government may say that, hey, that's a problem. And it's not only a DNS abuse problem, it is also IP address problem. So let us look into forcing them to do something. And what we want to do is to prevent this from happening. We want to be addressing this from a bottom-up multi-stakeholder model and tell the government, you don't need to do anything. So that would be my perspective. But I believe there's another gentleman who wants to comment.
Hi, Dave Phelan, APNIC Secretariat, also Policy Manager. So I'll talk a little bit about what we can and can't do. I'll quote Jeff Houston, we are not the internet police. We cannot tell people to not do things. We can, if a membership is cancelled, resources are withdrawn, we say don't announce. Can't stop you from still announcing it. We then go to your upstream. Hey, can you filter this prefix, please? We can't enforce this. This is not anything we have control over, right? They're numbers. Names are easy. You remove them out of the zones, they're gone, right? If you've got, spoof domains, that's easy to deal with from a CCTLD side. Numbers are way harder. I'll start with that. Number two, if we have an abuse contact that is non-responsive, we have an escalation process to deal with that. We can request, contact them directly and say, hey, we know you've had this abuse report. You need to respond to this abuse report. Then what do? We've got nothing. I'm not going to repeat AFTAB's multi-jurisdictional problems because that's just going to be a problem wherever we go.
Thank you very much. Good discussion, but we're running out of time. But I wonder if Charles, you have any comments on what we discussed?
Yeah, not to be too cheeky, but I would I would say we'll be talking about this for the next 100 years. We've been talking about this for 15 years. We've been talking about this since the beginning of the internet. We're going to be talking about it forever. The problems that exist, the core issues that we're trying to address, will not go away. This is a public health problem, right? So I can remember briefing ministers and they didn't get, the technology side of it. We can't do this, we can't do that. The underpinning of why the abuse exists will continue no matter what vector you shut down or close off. It's going to shift. The question is what's the best way to deal with it within your particular community? And we're not going to be able to answer this in one session or three. And whether one side's harder or not, what I would say, having been on the other side of the fence and now being on the private sector side, having a good understanding of both worlds, both parties, if you will, are looking for a solution and pointing to one another to fix it. That's cliche that we need to come together, but as operators, there has to be some responsibility that we need to take to show that we might have some solutions that will get us some of the way there. Or else there's going to be some sledgehammers. And we know what happens when the sledgehammers come. It's ugly, and I think we were having this before. Government's not going to solve this problem. We know that. If this was all government to take care of, they're not going to solve it. There's going to still need to be both. The dialogue's happening. It needs to continue. Status quo is not acceptable, I think, is what we're all starting to see.
Yeah, thank you. Just be really conscious of time. I would like to have maybe Katie and Ian to have any closing comment from you. Maybe you can start with Ian and then Katie.
Look, not really to build much more on what Charles said. I think there's certainly appetite and curiosity. I mean, I'm not from this community. I don't have a lot of experience in the space. I don't know the history and the technical viability, but I think I tend to embody a lot of what governments are looking for in this space. And I think take that invitation and have more discussions. And some of the comments I was making in an earlier session is that we're not great at talking technical details, but we want the outcome. And I think if there are governments who are willing to have that discussion and want to work at mutually agreed paths forward, take them up on that invitation, have that conversation, because if it's not going to happen here, it's going to happen at the ITU. And that's a far more fraught conversation than I think this community is probably prepared for.
Katie?
So I think my message is very similar, right? So I think I just now heard some feedback, how do you know this is a fraudulent report and stuff, right? And that's exactly why we are here talking about, making a structured format, making a structured content on how to report. Again, I've seen how the banking industry revamp themselves, jurisdiction by jurisdictions. Again, it bounds to go to certain jurisdiction that the KYC is not fantastic, and then we see organized crime. They fish and then they transfer money to the certain jurisdiction where the money can be taken out, and how the organized crime can be benefited. So I see the organized crime, the cost of doing the crime is becoming higher. I'm not saying this is a silver bullet solving the issue. And I'm clearly seeing internet is fuel of the economy. To me, it's like, we know that the IP address is like maybe, or the DNS is like a gun. In certain jurisdiction, that's not allowed. If you go to that jurisdiction, you buy a gun, and you say, I'm supplying a gun, but I don't care what is the usage of the gun. But again, my view is that, this is dangerous weapon. And again, you look at the cybercrime rate over all the cities and all the countries in the world, they are all on this rise. And so many citizens fall into the trap, right? So again, I see this is an issue. I'm new here. Apologize if I did not say something right. But again, I see that there are references that we can look into and start solving the problem day by day. Eventually, I believe that we'll get there. Again, this is human innovation. Internet is human innovation, and all the innovation we talk about, AI, blockchain, crypto, everything is right on internet. And we don't protect them, people abuse it. Yeah, that's my read. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me quickly give my own closing comment, and then we can close the session. I would say that ICANN is name and numbers, and it is in the ICANN bylaw that we don't police content. So it would be the same for names and numbers, that we don't want to touch content as well. But it doesn't mean that we can't deal with some of the abuse that we experience and we see in practice. I think even you also mentioned that we recognize there is a problem, and there is a reason why we have something called abuse mailbox in the policy in the first place. So the best way to address abuse is for the community, as a multi-stakeholder community, to start something before external party try to do it for us, and that won't be the multi-stakeholderism. That would be exactly against the internet governance ideal that we want to use. So hopefully this would be the beginning of another renewal of a discussion 15 years ago. But I think we can start baby steps, so we can learn from the naming committee what we have done, and see whether there are any ways that we can do it. I would also comment that if we are to police everything, it's going to have a lot of cost, and we don't want to have that. We want to have cooperation in the ICANN world. We have idea about trust and notify, and a lot of different types of cooperation, data sharing, to actually lower our costs. I think this also needs to be part of our discussion going forward as well. So for that, I'll close off the session. Thank you very much.
There is only one of you, only one of me. There's a million of those.